All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome. It's Wednesday, so it's time for another weekly live stream journaling session. And I was able to make it today. Sorry for the late notice of just kind of wasn't quite sure where I was going to be. So, thought I could just wait and see. And luckily, got home in time to pop on here and share something with you. So, yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to pop into the comments and say hi. It's always great to see who is out there and who's watching and where you're watching from. So anyway, so last time I started a new journal. So I've wrapped up the little emergence journal that I had been working on since May of this year, and I decided to work small again. There's a real difference between working in the big journal versus working in something really small and really intimate, and I really like that difference. And also, the big journal for me is my everything journal. It's my everyday journal. It's really about documenting life and thoughts and things in there. So it's pretty much a catch-all. Is a good way of kind of thinking of it. And the little journals serve more of a specific purpose. And so I have yet to figure out what the purpose of this little book is. So last time I stitched together 5 sheets of paper plus a cover to create a little pamphlet stitch booklet. And I'm using that as my little journal. And the interesting thing about that is that it has far fewer pages than, say, the emergence journal that I just finished up. So anyway, last time I was using some paint and some water soluble pencil, and today I'm not 100% certain where I'm going to go. And I think that's kind of part of the creative process of making any type of art, and that sometimes you sit down and you just don't know where to go, or you don't know how to proceed. And that's why I like having that habit of sitting down and just working. So sometimes it's like, oh, let me grab my pencil, oh, let me grab a pen, let me grab collage materials. So often I will sit down and sort of think about like what I want to do and kind of where I want to go with what I'm working on. But sometimes I just sit down and I'm just like, I don't know, and let's kind of see where it goes. And that's kind of how it is today. And like I said, I don't have a theme or a purpose for this little book yet. And with this one, I think it's going to emerge more organically. Whereas when I started the emergence journal, it really was, I had that word emergence in mind. It was something that came out of work that I'd been doing back at that time. And so it was a theme and idea that was really important to me. And I kind of have some ideas kicking around, some things I've been working on, currently, but nothing's really gelled yet. And I think with this little journal, it's going to take a little time for those ideas to kind of come together. So in the meantime, I'm just going to kind of dive in and work. So as always, if you just want to work along with me, of course, you don't have to do what I do. I just really look at this as a time for folks to kind of come together and make some art. And if you ever want to share what you've been working on, feel free to tag me, whether it's here on Facebook or on other social media platforms. So anyway, let's go ahead and I'll turn it over. I'll stop talking and I'll turn it over now. So I got my little pamphlet stitch book. So remember, it's just a piece of watercolor paper for the cover. I just use a piece of cotton warp thread to stitch it all together. It has 3 holes that are stitched together. And, with this one, I was really thinking about using very similar colors, very similar kind of ideas, like really limiting myself instead of all, every page is a different color or every page is something something totally different. think my wife is back from the grocery store. Anyway, so it's really using kind of that same color scheme and really trying to, I don't know, just trying to like see where this idea can go. So it's going to be more of a kind of cohesive. And even the last little one, I was trying to make it like flow from page to page, but this is really just like, okay, right from the bat, right from the get-go, right off the bat, I'm really having it kind of all tie together. So like I said, I'm not really sure exactly what I want to do, so I'm just going to grab my pencil, and I think I'm going to just start with some lines and thinking about how the lines can meander. Yeah, I've done this before. It's a common thing that I do. I am going to think about like, okay, what if that flips over and kind of lines up, and then just kind of goes through. So I could, like I mentioned last time, I could kind of do something to every single page. This only has 20 pages. So with using 5 sheets of paper, each paper gets folded in half, and then that creates 4 pages per sheet. And so this little book only has 20 pages. So I could, sorry, I'm trying to draw and talk at the same time. So yeah, I could end up doing like every single page, but I kind of worked halfway through it last time. And so that'll give me kind of the other half to kind of focus on at a later time. And then the other thing is to kind of think about like, well, does that second half do similar things happen, or does it like change? Does something else happen? That's another reason that I'm kind of thinking about just, you know, not really doing much beyond the center of the book here for right now. Okay, I think I'm going to do a couple other lines. So I think, what if this one comes down? It's always interesting whenever we've got lines that hit the bottom and the top. Maybe this wanders over. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is trying to break out of some of the habits I've gotten into as far as working in the book, or like, you know, I go back again and again to those geometric shapes. And I did that here as well on some of the pages. But that's one thing that I'm kind of feeling like that I want to break away from at least a little bit. So I'm not 100% certain like what that's going to be like. And I think I tend to go back to the geometric shapes, the squares, the circles, the rectangles, because they offer a lot of stability. I create a lot of structure on pages. And so that's something that I'm struggling with now, something that you know, it's like when you look at your work and you're like, I'm not 100% happy with what I'm doing, but I've been doing it for so long. I've kind of, it's become my comfort zone is basically what's become. Just kind of looking, I'm like, I got the paintbrushes, I got some paint there. So all of a sudden I'm like, oh, maybe I could do something with the paint. But I don't want to just do some random splatters or scrubby paint. I'm thinking I really like the lines So if I grab the brush, if you tune into my Monday mix or my mixed media Monday um, kind of YouTube series, I share it on YouTube, and then I always make a link on Facebook. But I've been working a lot with a brush pen, and that's been really interesting. And somebody had asked, like, well, why not just paint, using a paintbrush? And one of the things that I really liked about the brush pen was that it was um, it's always full of ink, and so you don't have to stop like I am now and load it up with paint. So you can, I mean, I'm getting a very similar quality with this brush. So I can get thick lines and thin lines. But it's that constant, like, going back and getting more water and getting more paint. Let me try something. I'm going to do something a little different. So one of the things that I can do is actually make this big brush. Is basically make a well of paint. I mean, that's why the lids of the paint palette or paint tray are actually little pallets. So maybe just go ahead and get a whole bunch of paint and water. I do have a set of liquid watercolors. I might think about grabbing those at some point. Unfortunately, they're not here inside of my little studio space. They're out in my garage, which used to be my studio space until I started doing stuff from the internet or for the internet, since I don't have Wi-Fi out in the garage. And of course, there's no insulation, so it's this time of year, it's very cold. So maybe that will help. Just to kind of give me a constant supply of paint. I'm not really sure where these kind of lines are leading. I mean, using the red definitely has a sort of blood vessel an organic feel to them. So I really think at this point, I'm just I'm playing around. I'm exploring. I'm experimenting. Kind of seeing what's going to develop. Trusting my intuition more. Not making decisions because I have a theme or an idea in mind. So that I don't need to use a hair dryer, what I try to do is try to keep the pages separated as I turn them. So kind of like don't turn it all the way, keep a finger in there. That also helps me kind of flip it back and forth so I can kind of line up the marks. I just really like how the lines go across the page, break up the spread into smaller, uneven kind of shapes. Okay. Now, like I said, I've been just going to kind of stop when I get here to the center. Maybe play around with some of these and kind of the thickness and the thinness, the variation of the lines. Yeah, I just find that as I'm working on things like this where I don't have a direction yet, that working with this kind of mark making, yeah, it doesn't take a lot of conscious thought, and it just allows me to kind of dwell on the ideas, to kind of sift through them. I mean, I know I've shared this before, but it's just like that notion of like when you go for a walk and all of a sudden you get this like amazing thought or insight, and it kind of seems like it comes from nowhere. It's the same thing with this. A lot of times, you know, I'm working and just an idea will pop into my head, and it's just kind of that thing where my hands moving but my brain's active, but doesn't have to give 100% attention to the task at hand. So I think sometimes we get into that trap of like, oh, well, I just can't think of anything to make. And it's like, well, just start making something and see what comes about. There's all these different ways of working. And sometimes it's like if one's not working, then you try something else. So there's a lot of folks that, you know, get a very specific idea, like, oh, this is what I want to make. And then, you know, they sit down and try to make that. Or maybe you just kind of have an inkling of an idea, like, oh, I have this notion, but I'm not quite sure. Let me play around with it. And that's kind of how I was with the emergence journal, was just I have this theme, I have this idea, I want to explore it more, kind of see if there's more to it. Um, and then there's just that notion like, okay, I'm just going to start experimenting. I'm going to start playing. I'm going to start putting some things down, making some marks, making making something. Okay. All right, I think I want to hit this with the hair dryer just to kind of dry some things. Mute so you don't have to listen to it. Okay. I feel like I want to go back to the water soluble pencil. Not really sure. Kind of keeping it in this kind of brownish, kind of earth tone vein, I think. All these like small pieces, small pencils that are almost used up. There it is. I was looking for the one. So this is baked earth. It's kind of like a terracotta color. I'm going to sharpen it. So sorry for the noise. It's like my first natural instinct is, oh, let me make some circles or some straight lines, or I don't know, just I kind of want to break out, but I'm like, I don't know how to do that. It's been so long since I've just sort of, I don't know. What do I want to do? Very good question. Yeah, let's go ahead and continue some of these lines. Still like that idea of making them flow from one page onto the next. kind of a tangled vibe from this now. I think I want to dry that, so let me mute it. All right, so yeah, so I just keep going back to this idea of tangled, just all these lines kind of coming together. I'm starting to think about like it might be interesting to kind of pull out some of these and use some shading and have kind of things going into the space, like kind of leveling down. So this idea of levels. Um, yeah, so all of a sudden all this stuff is like kind of bouncing around. So I'm going to grab a pen and my index cards. Because here's the thing, I don't quite want to write in this yet because I'm not quite sure. But with kind of that notion of tangled kind of flowing around, I want to go ahead and write something about that. So just gonna I think I'm gonna use it as a prompt. I'm not gonna do like a stream of consciousness writing. I think I'm just gonna kind of start listing, see what kind of comes up. I don't know. We'll kind of see where it goes. Okay. Yeah, I got some lots about being twisted or knotted. Also, kind of thinking about many paths. All these lines are kind of like different paths going through. Hmm. Interesting, interesting. Still don't know where it's going, but that's kind of the fun part. All right. So this is a willow, which is a darker brown, not a real dark brown, but darker than that baked earth. And so I keep thinking about I want to have some depth in it. So one of the things I've noticed in my art is that I used to do that a lot. I used to have this sort of these areas in the work that look like they went into the surface, and I've gotten away from that a little bit. So again, kind of looking at the work, trying to evaluate it, trying to think about uh, something that might need a change, or thinking about things that I've liked about the work in the past. And revisiting these ideas, but taking it into a new direction. That just, let's write that down, new direction. So by keeping a nice sharp edge along the one side, and then I start to create a little bit of a shadow. Start to create some depth. Not a lot yet, kind of working up to it. And just like my emergence journal, I kind of see this little journal as more of an art journal, more of about exploring artistic ideas. Kind of seeing this little book as more as a separate work of art, like one kind of one small but all encompassing, all the pages and everything kind of working together to create a solitary piece of art, instead of having a lot of different art on each page though. So kind of again thinking about how things relate. Let me go ahead and dry that. Forgot to put one of these lines in. That's all right. All right, so the kind of shading, the depth is a little bit subtle right now, but at least it kind of gives me an idea, a notion. So I think that's a good place to stop. So I've got, got some things going on, got some ideas flowing in the book. They're more visual ideas, but then got some things written down, so that might give me some possibility as far as kind of where to go. So anyway, but like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of stop there. So let me switch this back. All right. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering, I'm kind of lost, I'm kind of just trying to find direction. Maybe that becomes the theme of this little book. But that's, I think that happens a lot with art, is that we don't know exactly where it's going. We just like feel compelled, like, okay, I'm going to trust my intuition to kind of let this thing kind of go where it needs to go, and then the meaning kind of comes up as we go along. So anyway, just something different. Yeah, so if you've got any questions or comments or concerns, please pop them into the comments, and I'll be more than happy to try to respond, or if it's something that you want to see, or if there's something you want me to talk about, I can always do that. So anyway, like I said, thank you so much for joining me for this again, and yeah, I'll see you next week. So have a great week and happy creating.